I'm just. Oh,
Hi, Claire Flanagan.
That's it starting now, Ian.
Looks like it started now.
Starting.
Okay. Welcome everyone to this meeting of the East Lothian Integration Joint Board on the 23rd of February. This meeting is being recorded and will be made available as a webcast in order to allow the public access to the democratic process in East Lothian. East Lothian Council and NHS Lothian are the data controllers under the Data Protection Act 2018. Data collected as part of the recording will be retained in accordance with the Council and the Health Board's policies on record retention. The webcast of this meeting will be publicly available for up to 6 months. I now take a roll call of attendees, so if you could confirm when you hear your name, please. Shimeen Akhtar.
present.
Lachlan Bruce.
Present.
Lynn Jardine.
Present.
Carol McFarlane.
Present.
Elizabeth Gordon.
Present.
Fiona Ireland.
Present.
Peter Murray.
Present.
Val de Souza.
Present.
Thank you. Maureen Allen.
Present.
David Binney. No, I didn't think I saw him. Philip Conaglan.
Present.
Lorraine Cowan. Claire Flanagan.
Present.
Ian Gorman.
Present.
Wendy Hale. Claire McIntosh.
Present.
Thank you. Marilyn McNeil.
Present.
Thomas Miller. Judith Tate.
Present.
And John Turtle's not here. And I think Fiona Wilson is coming along. Will be here hopefully about 2:30. Can I ask if any members have any declarations of interest on any of the items today? Nope, that's great. Thank you.
John Hardman's here. I'm going to John. Do you want to just say what you're going to say? Your hands up.
Yeah, sorry, I was a moment late entering because I had IT problems. I'm here instead of John Turville as interim clinical director. Thanks.
Great, thank you, John.
Sorry, Fiona, I cut you off mid-sentence.
That's okay. We don't have any declarations of interest, so we're ready to start the business, Chair.
Okay, can I ask the members to indulge me and allow item 4 to be held off until Fiona arrives? So I don't know exactly when that will be. So it may be that it may come after 5, 6 or 7, but whenever Fiona arrives, I would like to take item 4 after Fiona's with us. Does anybody dissent from that? No, are we okay with that then? Thank you. All right, let's go, Fiona, to the first item, please.
The first item is the minutes of the IJB's meeting on the 8th of December for approval.
Well, as normal, I will invite any comment on the accuracy. I'm not going to go through it page by page, but if anybody has any issues on any of the items contained within it or accuracy of it, please let me know. I'll deal with matters rise in a moment, but just on accuracy if we can. I'm not seeing any concerns, so Fiona, I'm taking that as approved.
Thank you.
So any matters arising that's not on today's agenda? No, I've got a couple of updates if I can, Fiona, in the absence of anybody else wanting to raise anything. Page 2 and go overlaps onto the top of page 3. Marlon asked about meeting with the area partnerships. I've been in discussion with Fiona about that, Marlon, and we're still awaiting confirmation as to the best way to deal with that query you raised. So if you can bear with us, we haven't quite concluded on that item yet, but it's still very much in the throes of discussion. So hopefully I'll have a response to you within the next week.
That's fantastic to hear.
Page 3, I undertook to speak on Fiona Ireland's point to Craig Marriott and to Claire about the set-aside budget. I have a communication with both, but Craig has advised me, Craig being the Finance Director for NCS Lothian, he's advised me that they have paused that work because of the potential NCS. And if the NCS appears to be being stalled, they will resurrect that work. But for now, it's been paused. Just so you're aware of that. Claire, do you want to add anything to that, or is that sufficient? No. And the last item that I was asked to follow up on, which I did with Fiona yesterday, was on Judith's suggestion that we consider performance measures that might bring greater clarity to the role of social workers. And indeed, she went further to suggest we might want to consider a development session. So I think we've agreed to that, Judith. It's just a matter of timing. So what we thought helpful, and welcome any further contribution you think useful, Judith, we've suggested that the performance measures that we would think appropriate would be brought into the development session, so we could have a discussion that would include that as well. Does that satisfy the query you raised, Judith?
Yes, it does. Thank you, Peter. I mean, since I made that suggestion, obviously my departure from East Lothian has been announced. So I will hand that over to, there will be an interim appointment made shortly, and then the substantive post will be advertised pretty quickly. So there will be somebody in post, there will be a Chief Social Work Officer, but I think it will be a joint effort planned with the Adult Social Work Service, but happy to take that forward. Thanks, Peter.
Thank you, Judith. Val, you've got a question?
Sorry, Peter, I wasn't quick enough. It's in relation to the set aside, so the previous point. I just wonder if we should have a bit of timing on that. These kind of things can go on for quite a long time. And I wonder if we should be thinking about maybe, okay, pausing that activity for the moment, but maybe review that in 3 months or 6 months. Just a suggestion, Peter. I just think there could be quite a bit at stake in relation to the funding allocation and activity around that. So just something to consider. Thanks, Peter.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that, Val, because I think you're right. For those that are not aware of what we were hoping to achieve, and this is going back, it doesn't feel like this long ago, but it's pre-COVID. We were getting to the point when Susan Goldsmith, the former finance director, was in post, of having individual costs associated with East Lothian residents' use of the delegated acute services. So we actually made some significant progress down that road. And Claire, I'll invite you to come in if you feel it helpful at all, or to supplement what I'm going to say. But as I say, that work was paused because of COVID. And the explanation that I've been given, I've outlined to you just minutes ago. But equally, I'm happy to do as Val suggests. And in the minute, note that I would ask Craig in 3 months' time, based on the NCS work and where we perhaps there are then with more clarity on that, whether or not that work should be resurrected more helpfully at that juncture. Anything to add, Claire, to that, or is that sufficient, do you think?
Yeah, no, I think you've summed up the proposal. It was really it was trying to get the activity data, particularly around set aside and hosted services, the activity data linked to the cost data more to drive the cost data that's then reported through to the IJB.
Thanks, Claire. Shameen?
Thanks, Peter. Just to add on the top of page 3, we had a discussion around anti-poverty work that was happening in East Lothian, and as a result, what we did was circulated around Paolo Vestri, who coordinates all the anti-poverty action plan for East Lothian, and pulled together all the activities, and that was circulated around everybody. So I just want to make sure everybody got it, and if anybody had any feedback, then please do pass it on.
No, thanks, Shane. That's a helpful addition to the minute and the commitment that we gave to that. Does anybody want to add anything or query whether or not they were in receipt of what Shameen's referred to? No, I'm not seeing anything, Shameen. So thank you for bringing that back to our attention, and we'll move on if that's okay. So on the basis, Fiona Curry, that we are going to pause on item 4, can we move to next item after that, please?
Yeah.
Sorry, the chair's report first. Beg your pardon. Yeah, beg your pardon. very little to report in this instance. Hopefully, you may have already read or at least become aware of the Audit Scotland report that was published today. It may be useful background reading for you. Clearly, it's orientated towards NHS, but nonetheless, we have a strong interest in all things that happen within that, particularly those areas that are delegated. So you may wish to avail yourself of that report published today by Audit Scotland on NHS Scotland 2022, I think is its title. So I would suggest that you perhaps avail yourself of that. Yesterday, the chairs and vice chairs across Scotland, Shameen was there and I was there obviously in my current role in that group, where we heard from the lead in Scottish Government on NCS. So we got a good update on NCS that I'm happy to summarise and share if that is something that people would be interested in. Anna Kinston is the lady's name. She's always very willing to come along to the group. And what we invited Anna to further consider was to what extent could chairs and vice chairs be more actively involved in the evolution towards whatever becomes of the NCS. So that's probably as much as I think relevant today, but if anybody wishes me to summarise, I took some notes on yesterday's exchange, I'll happily provide that to you if that would be of interest to you. There was also an input on mental health arrangements for veterans that again has got a strong link to work that we do locally. And Oxfam came and gave us a presentation on an attempt they are trying to secure, which is to get an additional Scottish Government, it's not target, it is, what was the term he used? Aim or objective, I can't remember, it's something along those lines. I think it's a Scottish Government, I'll get the right terminology and get it then, but basically they're asking for care to be a separate, individually identified Scottish Government commitment. Not the Carers Act or other aspects of care that we're familiar with, but care as a thing in its own right. Simeon, did you want anything to that? Your mic's off.
No, not on that one, but just on the National Care Service, one of the questions somebody asked it before I was going to ask was around children's services and justice social work. So that was raised, and they said they were carrying out some research on it, but at what time would that? When would that decision be made? And I know seeing some of the things in the press that might be a little bit up in the air, but that was raised because that's really quite a big substantial move for us in East Lothian when we're trying to align education and children's services together. So that was really important, and other colleagues from other parts of Scotland were raising that as well.
Thanks, Simeon. Judith?
Thanks, Peter. So just to update, the Dr. Bridget Daniel has been asked to oversee a steering group that will guide and direct a piece of research into this question. It will not, though, result in a recommendation about whether children's services should or shouldn't become part of the National Care Service. It will set out the evidence for the best ways in which the needs of children can be met and the best ways that the promise can be delivered. And it will look at national and international research, what there is in terms of the structures that exist in other places. It will engage with, with children, families and young people. It will build on the evidence that's already, I guess, been gathered from people with lived experience. There will be surveys of that are issued to staff. So it's probably as evidence-based and forensic as it can be, and I would be confident in Bridget Daniel's capacity to lead a piece of sound research. Celsus is hosting this, and my understanding is that the findings from that will be put to Cabinet in and around kind of October, November of this year, and this was pre any more recent political changes, obviously, but with a view to that, Parliament been asked to make a decision in and around kind of April, May time of 2024. But just to be clear, it will not be saying this is our recommendation. It will be setting out what evidence there is for the best ways in which children's needs can be met, and whether there is evidence of the kind of structural supports for that. Thanks. I'll stop there.
Thanks, Judith. That's helpful. And for those of you that had the opportunity to First Minister's questions today, there were something in the order, I think it was 4, but there were certainly 3 questions on the promise put to the First Minister and the ongoing commitment and delivery towards the outcomes that were identified in it. So it's certainly live and kicking in terms of the elected members' perspective in the Scottish Government. Sinead.
Just that's really helpful. So that it'd be really important to have that research. It's a little bit odd that it's not a recommendation at the end, but I think I know other partners will contribute to the children's services. I think if we have any opportunities to make any contributions to the social justice and social work, then we should take that opportunity.
Absolutely. Peter, if I can just come briefly back in, the information about the research is available on the CELSIS website. So there's a page on CELSIS which will, I think the idea is to keep people posted with the kind of, the literature review and the evidence review as that emerges and is gathered. I mean, I think the lack of a recommendation probably nods to the fact that some areas in which children's services is included deliver very well, and conversely others it doesn't, and it's more likely to be about leadership and culture than it is about structure. But I'm not yet sufficiently cited on the emerging themes that are coming from that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Judith. Both helpful comments. So on that basis, can we now move on, Fiona, please, to item 5?
Item 5 is the final report of the Community Hospitals and Care Home Provision Change Board, and it's Ian Gorman to present the report.
Thank you, Fiona. And Ian, just before you start, hopefully colleagues will recall this has been discussed at several other venues where we've had the opportunity to comment on it, but on that basis, Ian, I will hand over to you to present your report.
Thank you very much. So the purpose of this report is to present the final working document for the Community Hospitals and Care Homes Provision Change Board. Just to note, a screen's on my right hand side, so if I'm looking to the right while I'm speaking, it's just to reference my own notes. The briefing paper has 4 recommendations. The first is to support the conclusions of this report, and there are 4 of these. They're set out in page 22 of the report, or if you've got the full document pack for today, that's page 52 of that document. Those recommendations, as per the document, are in relation to hospital capacity, care home capacity, the intermediate care services that we offer, and progressing around the financial development of the options that we have around these services. Recommendations 2 and 3 are to note that we would like to take these different recommendations and pull them together into specific options that would then be presented back through the SPG and up to the IJB. Recommendation 4 is to note that the Provision Change Board, which progressed this work, has now stood down, and the final meeting was on the 18th of January 2022. As Peter's already noted, there's been a range of discussions on this throughout both the IJB, the SPG, briefing sessions and development sessions. So there are only a few points that I'd like to highlight as I go through this report. First of all, in paragraph 4.2, I would just like to acknowledge the work of those that were involved in our engagement sessions, both face-to-face online meetings and questionnaires, and to acknowledge the officers within the HSCP who carried out that work. The findings from that are within the main report, and they're within page 7 of the document for anyone who'd like to reference that, or 37 of your main document pack for this meeting. The second point I wanted to address was just under 6.1. So we've noted in the paper, this is just due to timelines of presentation, that the impact assessment was due to be carried out. And as you'll no doubt have picked up, that was carried out on the 8th of February 2023. The findings from that are still to be signed off by Fiona as Chief Officer. However, they are mostly positive, with a range of concerns around how we'll ensure as we progress these options, we're picking up the voices of minorities within the community and people who may be directly affected with conditions that would be supported by things like our LD services. What we've done around that is to create a support plan, which will be coordinated through our qualities officer with the first updates for completion of those actions in spring of this year.
Ian, can I just pause just for a second? I know Andrew put his hand up. Ian, Andrew, is something relevant to what Ian has said, or yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. I was actually just coming in to notify us that the IIA report has actually now been signed off and is available online, and I'll post a link to it in the chat just for anyone who would like to have a look at it.
That's great, thank you.
Excellent, thanks, Andrew. Finally, the only other area I wanted to note was just under section 8, which is the resource implications. When we've rehearsed this, that in order to progress this work, we wanted to have indicative costings attached to some of these options, but we really just wanted to stress the point that within these reports, these are indicative, and because of the fluctuations we've seen in the economic environment over the last 12 months, and those things that we know are likely to increase over the or continue over the next 2 to 3 years, we expect that as we progress this work, that those financial estimates are likely to shift. And I think we just need to be realistic within this, that whatever we progress, we're likely to progress within a reduced financial environment for our agencies and our partner organisations. The only other point just to note, which is just a very small thing I realised as I was reading the paper today, it's just a 2.4, the recommendation. Notes that the board was closed down on the 18th of January 2022, and that was obviously the 18th of January 2023. So apologies for that error, and we'll have that retrospectively corrected within the paper. I'll pause there, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Ian. At this juncture, we'll open up for any questions or comments anybody wishes to make. Siobhan.
Yeah, no, just to acknowledge all the work that you've mentioned, Ian, already, and I just wondered, you've talked through the process of the recommendations of the next steps, and I just wondered if somewhere in between SPG and the IJB, whether you think it might be useful to maybe have a session to go through it with members, whether it be like a briefing or a development session. But I'll leave that with you, because
Do you want to respond to that, Ian, or do you want to wait?
Just will be very happy to do that. There's a little bit of pace that we have to put around some of this, and I think it'll be interesting for the phasing with the IJB meetings as to when we want to bring some discussions in. And the other element to this, I think, is any of the options that we progress, there will be elements of consultation to those specific options as well, Siobhan. So it's just the timing of that, but absolutely not the SPG and IJB business session will be for the formal agreement of any options, but in between then we would still bring work back through the other groups.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Siobhan. Val?
Just like Shameen, just want to thank you for the reporting and everybody who's put the work into it. It's very clear, we're very well laid out, and really encouraged to see the engagement aspect. What I'm also encouraged about and would again endorse is the continuing emphasis on being evidence-based, which I think you are being. I think we don't have fixed worlds anymore, and I think that continually monitoring and being evidence-based in relation to the capacity and planning, I think will be really important. So I guess being agile, and leadership at the moment needs to be agile, doesn't it? So if ever it needed to be agile, I think now is it. But just that, just thank you for that emphasis on evidence base, and encourage that further. And would really like to see the IAA as well. So thank you for that, Andrew. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, in the absence of other questions, which I will slow a little bit longer for, can I just add to that I was directly involved in it, but I take absolutely no credit for any of the work that went on. It was done very diligently by many people. And the point that you've just made, Val, I think we've set our stall out by the communications work that's taken as to where we are. So we've set the benchmark quite high with that regard, in terms of making sure that we engage across the piece, and that equally matches, Siobhan, your comment with regard to how it is taken forward. So I'm not seeing any other hands go up. So Fiona, if I can hand back to you, pleased to seek the support of members.
Okay, thank you very much. The recommendations are as Ian outlined in the report, to support the conclusions of the report and the 4 recommendations, to direct the Chief Officer and Senior Management Team to develop the range of capacity options, request the Chief Officer and Senior Management Team report back to the SPG with proposals and final actions, and to note that the Provision Change Board will be formally stood down, was formally stood down at the last meeting. Can I come to each of the voting members individually, please? Councillor Akhtar.
Support.
Councillor Bruce. Councillor Bruce.
Apologies, couldn't get unmuted. Support.
Thank you. Elizabeth Gordon.
Support.
Fiona Ireland.
Support.
Lynn Jardine.
Support.
Al McFarlane.
Support.
Peter Murray.
Support.
And Val de Souza.
Support.
Thank you. That's the recommendations approved unanimously.
Thank you, Fiona. Fiona, Curry, can we go back to item 4 now, please? Because I noticed that Fiona's been able to join us.
Thank you. Item 4 is the 2022-23 Q3 financial update from Claire Flanagan.
Hi, Claire. Are you just going to present it, or do you want any introduction? Are you happy just to take it from here?
Yeah, I'll just go through, give a quick update the paper, and then we can have a discussion or take questions. So this financial update report does provide the IJB with its Q3 financial forecast position for this financial year 22-23. The Q3 review process is a financial forecast exercise undertaken by partners NHS Lothian and East Lothian Council, and it's based on information to the end of December to forecast the financial year-end position. You will know from previous papers and reports to the IJB that in our other financial forecasts, which we undertook at Q2, the IJB was reporting a close to a break-even position. And at Q2, it was only a small projected overspend of £92,000 of a projected overspend. You'll see from the Q3 review tables in the report, this position has changed. You'll also note there are 2 tables for the forecast today, and I'll go into this in more detail shortly. The Q3 projection for the IJB is either £718,000 of a projected overspend being reported at Q3, or 1.2 million of a projected overspend. Within the delegated health budgets, there's still a financial pressure around set aside, and the main areas driving this pressure are within, so particularly within gastroenterology drugs. So cost increases mainly due to new medicines, and then there is staffing pressures and cost increases due to high cost agency and locums to support staffing gaps in some of the wards that are delegated to the IJB. The reason for the range of a Q3 position today is due to being notified by East Lothian Council that they may decide to withdraw the funding assumption that they would pass across to the IJB a share of the revenue funding that was provided to them by Scottish Government, which was provided to support the increased costs associated with the local authority pay settlement that happened in 22-23. This funding had been reported to the IJB in previous financial forecasts provided by the Council, and therefore any change in this position does mean an adverse impact of £485,000, which is why our position may move to the larger overspend calculated to be 1.2 million. I understand this position is going to Council next week as part of the financial monitoring papers. I would also ask the IJB to look to myself as CFO to call a meeting with both partners, Directors of Finances, to discuss the IJB year-end position and how this can be managed. The next section of the paper focuses on COVID exit. So during COVID, a variety of services within the Health and Social Care Partnership were set up or enhanced and were funded through the COVID funding that came from Scottish Government. The expenditure incurred for over that period is included at figure 3, And finally, the IJB will be aware that the COVID funding reclaim and that Scottish Government were reclaiming the unrequired COVID funding, and this transaction is in the process of happening. The last paragraph in the paper moves into look at 23-24. So we have received the recent correspondence from Scottish Government regarding the IJB budget offers from partners, and the parameters clearly set out in the letter done in line with the previous years. Both letters are attached at appendices 1 and 2, and we are due to receive indicative and formal budget offers from partners shortly.
Thank you, Claire. Okay, as you can all see, the position has worsened in terms of the overall finances of the IJB. Part, as Claire has described, is achieved, if that's the right way to describe it, by a change, or a potential change rather, in the funding that was anticipated to come through from East Lothian Council with regard to additional money that was received from Scottish Government to fund the uplift in pay for social care staff. You'll be familiar, I'm sure, with the management of our budget is a challenge year on year, but when any potential change is brought into the mix at a relatively late stage, there is the exacerbated difficulty, if you like, of Fiona and her team being able to identify where cost savings may come from in order to deal with that unexpected additional shortfall. So with that background, I will invite questions. So we've got Fiona Ireland.
Thanks, Peter. Firstly, just Claire mentioned there about supporting her in calling a meeting, and I think that absolutely we would have to support that, and I personally would support that. I suppose my question, and I did when I read this in the papers, go back to the previous year's IJB papers on the budget allocation, and back in March 22. On the 24th of March, our paper on the budget allocation for 22-23, which is the one that we're really talking about, stated that the Scottish Government position in terms of that allocation was, as we understand this year's to be also, that there had to be additionality and that the earmarked funds were to be aligned to the integration authority as additionality. So my question really is, what is the legality of the position to then say that earmarked funds are to be withdrawn? I appreciate that it's being put forward as a proposal, but is that something that can happen given the way that the funds are allocated in the letters that come out on an annual basis from the Scottish Government?
Claire, do you want to respond to that, or do you want to take Elizabeth's question first, or are you happy just to respond to that individual point?
Yeah, I was going to respond to that point first, only because just to give you some background around the mechanics of the funding coming in. So when the IJB received its budget at the start of 22-23, this pay uplift funding wasn't part of that original budget. The pay uplift funding was part of, you'll be aware that the local authority pay settlement concluded partway through the year, and as part of that conclusion, there was a few different funding sources that were given to councils to support the increased cost of this pay settlement. So it's always been a funding assumption that when the council received their share of the revenue allocation, we were advised previously that a share of that would be passed over to the IJB. So we would see an increase in our IJB budget. Now the timing of that hasn't actually happened, so we've never seen an increase in our IJB budget. So it's really a funding assumption that's been removed. not the physical cash moving around the system, if that makes sense, Fiona.
So Peter, can I very quickly come back on that, because I think that so again, regardless of what point it came into being, it came in with a ring fence around it in terms of what it was for. So and I think that the consequences of that being withdrawn now have then consequences for the I never get these years right, 23-24 budget, because it's about the baseline plus the additionality for the 23-24, and if that is not part of the baseline, then we'll be in an even worse position for the coming year, is how I see it.
Yeah, you're right, Fiona.
Fiona, if you don't mind, much as I think that's a very important point you've made, and Claire, please correct me if this is wrong, but your suggestion that we have further discussion to clarify exactly where we are, because we're still dealing to a degree with hypotheticals in terms of the determination, as you rightly pointed out, which will take place at the meeting you described next week. In advance of that, Claire, am I right in assuming that you're seeking to have that meeting ahead of that so that we can get a position very clearly established before we're able to respond as we might think appropriate, and if the decision is made to withhold the funding?
I think the council papers are probably likely to be out, if not out already, but out imminently for their meeting on the 28th of February. So I think it's unlikely we would get time in the diary to have a discussion around, particularly around the pay uplift. But I think the decision taken around the pay uplift is definitely something that will form part of the discussion more generally around the year-end position for the IJB and how that is managed.
Right,
Can I
thank
just
you.
confirm, Chair, that the council papers for next week's meeting are now published? They're on the council's website.
Thank you, Fiona. That's really helpful. Thanks for that. So we can make ourselves aware of the content of that. But Fiona, are you happy to allow us to carry on from the island?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I just wanted to make the point, well, to ask the question about whether the legality of it and to consider the future impact of it.
Yeah, no, thank you for that, Fiona. Elizabeth.
Thanks. My question kind of follows on from Fiona's. I was just wondering, is this is obviously my first year in the IJB. Is this an unprecedented situation, or looking back in the past, has something like this ever happened before? Thanks.
Elizabeth, this is unprecedented. I took up this role in 2018, and this has never happened before.
Is that okay, Elizabeth?
Yes, thanks.
Lachlan.
Thank you, Peter. I just had some questions around the way that the IJB will manage and projected overspend. Does the IJB is it the IJB's carrying reserves? That's correct, not including the ones COVID. And if so, how much is that amount that we're carrying? Would that be the plan of how to? Obviously, it's not the greatest solution plugging overspends with reserves, but I'm just wondering what the plan is to manage that.
So the IJB refers back to its integration scheme in terms of how it manages year end. So the first thing that the IJB would have to do if there was a projected overspend would be to look to come up with recovery actions. Now, given this decision is happening at the end of February, but there's no means to come up with suitable recovery actions to mitigate that. The IJB should assess whether it has sufficient reserves. I would be recommending that the IJB doesn't have sufficient reserves at this moment in time, and I'll give you more detail around the reserves position. And then the third part of the integration scheme is that the IJB is funded by two partners, so the IJB must go back to both its partners to enter into a dialogue around additional contributions to balance the IJB position. In terms of your reserves question, I'll just quickly give the IJB an update on where we are around our reserves position. So the IJB, if I start with our earmarked reserves, so our earmarked reserves are earmarked for specific policy initiatives directed through Scottish Government and for us for a specific plan or proposal or policy initiative. So we started the financial year with earmarked reserves of 15.4 million. Now during the year we have drawn down 13.6 million pounds of our earmarked reserves and utilised them in year, which leaves us with a balance of 1.8 million pounds that we will carry forward as earmarked reserves into next financial year. And all those earmarked, of the 1.8 million, everything has a commitment against it for earmarked plans going into 23-24, all in line with IJB directions and the IJB strategic plan. In terms of the IJB's general reserve, the IJB's general reserve is currently sitting at 4.8 million pounds. The IJB has a general reserves policy to state it must retain a level of general reserves, and that minimum level is 2%. So that 2% equates to 3.8 million pounds. So that gives us a little bit of general reserves of £1 million over and above our reserves policy. We are in the process. We did bring our financial plan to the IJB in December, showing significant financial challenges over the next 5 years. And I would not be recommending that we utilise general reserves to support an in-year position given the scale of the financial challenge that IJB is about to enter into. We also have a paper that is coming to our strategic planning group that is looking to potentially access some of the IJB's general reserve, and this is to support the transfer of community alarms from analogue alarms to digital alarms. The price tag for this is about circa £750,000. Now across the country, this is legislation that comes in 2025 that all alarms should be digital. There is different ways that IJBs across the country have treated this. If we didn't have a general reserve that we could utilise to purchase the alarms for it, because it's a one-off purchase, because our general reserves are non-recurring, then ultimately we'd be going back to East Lothian Council and asking them to purchase our digital alarms for us. So that's currently the position with our general reserves, and I hope that gives you a bit clarity. We are hoping to do a bit more detail around this because this is currently work in progress, and this will all form part of the budget paper that comes to the IJB in March.
Thank you, Claire. Does that answer your question, Lachlan?
Yes, thank you very much for that, Claire.
Val.
Peter, can you hear me?
Yeah, you break up a little bit, Val.
Can you hear me? I think my screen is frozen, so I can't see any of you anymore. Sorry, I've just sent you a text. So is it okay to speak? Can you understand what I'm saying? Yeah. Yes, okay. Yeah. Okay. So I guess I wanted to make a comment really about the additional pressure caused by the non-transferring of the money for the pay uplift for social care. And I guess I can see the risk for the IJB, absolutely. But I'm also thoughtful about the risk, perhaps, to the way that the council is perceived. And I say this with respect. Sorry, my screen has come back, so it's a little bit better when you can see people when you're speaking. So I'm going to say this with respect, but I'm thoughtful about it because I noticed that in the paper it said may not fund or pass over the funds. So I'm not sure if that ship has sailed. Now that the papers are out, but if it hasn't, I absolutely support the meeting. But I guess there's something for me about the National Care Service and some of the thrust behind the National Care Service being about the local authority support for social care and handling of social care. And I just wondered if there was any opportunity to reconsider any possibility of not handing that money over, because I guess it kind of reflects again on local authorities not supporting social care at tough times and the IJB. So it's not really a question, it's more a kind of, I know there are risks, I know it's all tight, very much around all the partners, so I do appreciate that. But in the spirit of partnership, I think there is something about upholding agreements, and I guess also I do see the risk for the local authorities in being perceived perhaps in not supporting social care at a critical time such as this, and with all that transient activity around the National Care Service, which I think might be reinforced or by recent political decisions. So I would leave it there, but it's really just a comment. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Val. I think Claire's outline of the reserves position has been helpful in many respects, particularly with regard to the fragility going forward and the uncertainty that Fiona also may wish to comment on if she feels it appropriate, because to have a recognised and policy set 2% is a good place to be by way of what I'll call a safety net that is appropriate going forward. And that added to that, the position on analog to digital is one that perhaps colleagues weren't familiar with, and it's helpful that Claire's brought that to our attention in terms of the questions that may be in people's minds around us carrying slightly more than 2% going forward, because as Claire's likely alluded to, the majority of that slight excess of 2%, if that's correct, Claire, correct me if I'm wrong, but the slight excess you outlined, the 3.8 to 4.8, is going to be attended to with an improvement in some of the services that we provide through that shift from analog to digital. So with that comment, I can see, John, you've got a question, if you don't mind, please.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. Just very briefly, we've heard from Claire that this is unprecedented in East Lothian. Do we know whether this has happened either this year or in the past in any other local authority areas?
I can answer that if you want, Claire. From the position in which I hold as the chair of chairs and vice chairs of IJBs in Scotland, I understand that there are a number of other local authorities that are considering adopting a similar approach, but not all. Does that satisfy you, John, or Claire? Did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, no, I mean, there was a letter that came out from government to say that the revenue funding for the pay uplift was to support all staff, so that included staff that were in budgets delegated to the IJB. However, yeah, Peter is correct. I think there are some other local authorities with this position, which is disappointing.
Okay, John.
Yeah, thank you. I guess just to get an idea of how much of an outlier we were in that situation. Thanks.
Ian.
Thanks. I just wanted to come in on another point about the reserves, and I recognise and support that we have to reconcile both this decision, a meeting with each partner, and then get to our year-end position and see where that takes us. But one of the anxieties about going below the 2% or even getting very close to the 2% in terms of what we hold as general reserves is just to come back to Fiona Ireland's point that we don't know our offers for next year from either agency. So if this is, and this is a recurring pressure of £750,000, so it will be in next year as a pressure. And if we're in a general reserves position of say less than £2 million, we'll already be starting with a £700,000 deficit against that. So there is an element here from the IJB perspective about how we offset this and the risk we take around the reserves position that is difficult to consider today because we can't see what our 23-24 position will be. And I think Fiona's point about the real terms uplift is one that we really need to consider in that. But also it's important that we get to a position quickly where we can understand the offers in detail from each partner agency so that we can understand the level of risk we're going into at the start of next year and the reserves position we have to offset that risk.
You may have noticed that Maureen Allen has put in the chat, although we've asked if we can, but it's helpful in this instance, so if we can avoid using the chat, if we can just make the comments so we can hear, but I'll just read it to you. That the budgets that Fiona Curry referred to so that the information on the budgets are to follow for the meeting to take place. So hopefully that's helpful. And thank you, Maureen, for alerting us to that. Simin.
Yeah, no, thanks, Peter. One of the areas that is a pressure for us is prescribing. And at the last NHS Lothian meeting, Craig Marriott had indicated that they NHS Lothian had received an additional 7 million of funding to specifically for prescribing. And I don't know if you're at a stage to be able to tell us what difference that makes to us.
So yeah, you're right, Shameen. There has been additional funding that's come in via Lothian that will support the prescribing budget, and we're just in the process of getting that allocated out. So we should see an improved position around our prescribing position. Also, the most recent data on prescribing has showed a really small improvement. So there was a bit of a spike taking us into Q3. So we had a bit of an adverse movement. So it's likely there's a small recovery just around price and short supply stabilising, but also potentially a further benefit that will come from the additional funding that would be put in by NHS Lothian, and we're just working that through in the background to see. We should have that for month 10.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Can I just add one of my own, if that's okay? Val made some really important points around our ability to support social care, and everybody will know from all the evidence, whether you describe it as anecdotal or otherwise, that there's going to be a growth in demand for social care services, and any budgetary effect that impacts upon our ability to deliver services of quality to that increased demand should be very carefully considered before we head down that particular path. And I absolutely appreciate, and Shameen has been very good at keeping me right in terms of the pressures on the council and the wider council services. And there's no way that I would suggest for a minute that we disregard that. But we are here to deliver the best we can based on the integrated joint board's responsibilities. And I think it's right and proper that we articulate, as we should, how we would see those best protected. So, Val, I would align myself to your comments if I can, in terms of making sure that we ensure that the quality of our services is not diminished as a result of budgetary decisions. Lynn, you want to add a comment?
Yeah, it was just similar to, I can't remember who was said that they were quite new to IJB. I'm new to IJB and I'm also new to council. But what I can say is, reflecting what Peter has indicated, that the budget discussions at the council have been exceptionally difficult. The word unprecedented was used earlier, and I think I'm under no illusion that the situation that all public authorities find themselves in is unprecedented at the moment. And what you were just saying there, Peter, about the quality of services, we're trying to maintain that across all of the services. Those of us that sit both council and on the IJB have a double responsibility in trying to make that work. And the approach that we're taking in the council of a collaborative way of working, obviously Fiona Ireland was talking, and Claire had indicated about the requirement, the wish to have a three-way conversation. I think that has to be the way we continue to work, not just at budget time, but as much as possible where we can through the year where there are those pressures, because to be entirely honest, this situation is not going to get any better.
No, thanks, Lynn. Thanks for making that point clear. Claire, you want to come back on that?
Yeah, no, just to say, yeah, I agree with Lynn around keeping that dialogue across all three partners, because that is, I suppose that's the point, that's the other risk to the IJB, that if one partner starts making difficult decisions around based on their financial position, we also have another partner who also is in a really challenging financial position, and the risk is that to the IJB is that that partner makes a similar decision.
Yeah. Fiona Wilson, do you want to add anything before we sum up on this?
Nothing in particular. I suppose just noting the comments made reflective of the difficult position both our partners are in. But I guess for Q3 we have recovery to do, and there's a risk to us. And I think just the messaging around the staff as well, that where the uplift isn't coming, we will do the right thing by them. But again, it's back to that messaging and the decisions that we'll have to take now and in years to come. So difficult decisions that have impact. But I'm keen that the team and I have recommendations for yourselves that will do that, because I don't want to get into a position around reserves that we're at risk. I don't believe that's the right way to go. I'll look to my CFO here that will support, but we do need to make these recommendations and look at options, because we need to do the right thing by the people in East Lothian. We've got a lot to offer, and we have done fantastic things, and I'm keen that we keep going with that, and take the opportunities with some of these decisions that we will need to take. I'll stop there.
Okay, Claire, I'm just going to come back to you in a minute just to perhaps help us with what you further recommend, because obviously we're just going to have to note the information, but clearly there's some discussions have led us perhaps to an additional element that we might want to just agree to, which is along the dialogue. But just before I do that, one thing that we haven't discussed in any great detail, but I think it's important for us to recognise, is that this is an in-year position clearly that is difficult. The next year may well be equally challenging, but what people should reasonably expect, and I think Fiona is taking the lead in this along with our colleagues, is that they are looking to find different ways of providing services to the communities that are as efficient and as effective as possible. And if those projects come to fruition, it's my belief that we will see an improvement in the effectiveness of those services, but also the costs attributed to delivering them. That's what transformation to me is partly about. It's also about ensuring that the services are of a standard that we would all expect and want for relatives and friends and family of our own. So with that kind of backdrop, I don't think we should lose sight of the fact that Claire did allude to the relationship between the reserves and the strategic plan. And I don't think we should lose sight of that relationship, because that's a really important future perspective that we would want to remain sighted on and keep a weather eye on as we progress through to the changes that will come as a consequence of that work. Some of it funded through the reserves that Claire's already pointed towards in terms of the split up of that money in the coming year and years. So Claire, is there anything that you wish us to consider? You said dialogue with East Lothian in this instance, but I think it's been suggested that that's a tripartite decision as much as it is just as you and the East Lothian.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I'm guided by the integration scheme. So in terms of the scheme, it is both partners. So I will take away the action to email the Director of Finance at both our partner bodies and ask for an urgent meeting just on the back of our Q3 report and how we can manage the year-end position.
Is everybody content with that approach? Yeah. Okay, well, thanks for that very helpful discussion, everybody, and for all the contributions. Fiona, I don't think this requires a roll call because it's just for noting.
That's correct. It's just for members to note.
Yeah, thank you very much. So can we move on to item 6 now, please?
Item 6 is the East Lothian Health and Social Care Partnership Commissioning Strategy for 2023-2025, and that's Andrew Main to present.
Andrew.
Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased today to present the draft East Lothian Health and Social Care Partnership Commissioning Strategy to IJB members. Essentially, I am looking for members to sign off the draft commissioning strategy and note the included commissioning intentions and key market messages. The strategy is intended to sit alongside and complement the IJB strategic plan and its directions, and as such is supportive of the strategic objectives that are set out in the strategic plan, and I am pleased to report it's already been to the commissioning board and the strategic planning group and received good feedback and was signed off by them. There was a slight amendment suggested by SPG members in relation to just adding some additional context to the governance section of the document, and I'm pleased to report that a slight update has been made to the document. And there has been an IIA undertaken, that was on the 19th of January. And unfortunately, the summary report is still in draft form and will be uploaded onto the website in due course. So I can only apologise for that not being available for members today. Like I say, just looking for approval of said commissioning strategy and for members to note the commissioning intentions and key market messages contained therein. I'd be happy to answer any questions if anyone has any questions.
Thank you, Andrew. Very welcome development in my view. Something that fits neatly with the sort of parallel, if you like, NCS work, we call it that. Something that we want to maintain a focus on in terms of the kind of broader expectations within it. So from my perspective, very welcoming of it. But at this juncture, I'll invite any questions anybody has. Siobhan.
Yeah, no, thank you, Andrew. We've had a good discussion around this at the SPG, so I welcome that and getting the feedback from procurement from other sections. It was good to highlight the good practice, and as we're looking at transformation about the Hardgate, so that was really helpful in there. But I was just mindful of an area where we touched upon was taking a light touch approach in some areas where we know there's voluntary sector community organisations that may not have the capacity to be able to manage a big commissioning process. So I know that Christine Johnson has been taking that approach with the day centres, but just to be mindful that we take that kind of measured approach as we're moving forward, and as more and more as we rely on working in partnership with our local partners and delivering lots of different services, that we take that measured light touch approach in some areas where it's required.
Andrew.
Yeah, absolutely, Siobhan. There's quite a wide range of options at our disposal that are included within Appendix 1 in terms of the different approaches that we can take to our commissioning activities. I think they probably capture, they're quite all-encompassing in terms of your full-blown large-scale commissioning and procurement activity down to your more grants-based spot purchased bespoke agreements. So hopefully that is captured within Appendix 1. We've certainly got a nice wide range of approaches when it comes to commissioning.
Thank you.
Thanks, Siobhan. Val?
Yeah, thanks very much. I mean, again, I like the layout is very clear. So thank you to you, Andrew, and to everybody else who's inputted into this report. Just one comment really for me. In all the reports that we see, we always see reference, don't we, to early intervention and prevention. And I think it's a bit of a wicked issue in a sense, because I think we have that aspiration, and I think often it's very difficult to shift spend and activity. I just wonder, and it's just a suggestion in terms of development opportunities and days for the IJB, that we might spend a bit of time actually looking at the sort of the pros, the cons, the challenges in order to get our teeth into early intervention and prevention as an IJB in a partnership. So it was really to commend the report. Absolutely agree that early intervention prevention should be there. But for me, I think it would be good to have a wider conversation about what that might look like and how achievable some of that is, particularly in terms of resource transfer and activity transfer. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Val. Can I just take that as a comment, Val, as opposed to a question? But I agree with that sentiment, and it's something that you described as, I think, wicked, that we all recognise, but more than happy to discuss with Fiona and Siobhan whether or not we can find the time early on to have a broader conversation about that. because it does fit entirely into kind of the broader aspiration, and indeed the comment I made just minutes ago about the kind of transformational change that we're required to consider as we go forward with the ability to provide services whilst demand continues to increase. We can perhaps stop the demand, I suppose is the general point or aspiration, but if we're going to achieve that, then perhaps that would be something to celebrate. Sorry, Judith, you want to come in?
Thanks, Peter. And appreciate there's, early intervention means different things in different settings and to different services. I suppose I'd want to, though, make reference to the fact that, the council's had a transformation of services for children programme underway for the past 2 years. And some of the work that's now beginning, I guess, to gather momentum for that will ideally and inevitably, if it works well, lead to a reduction in demand in adult services in particular areas. Now, maybe not the quantum of the work around the older people's agenda, but certainly around younger adults, around justice, around transitions, and around autism. So I think there are pieces of work that are underway, some of which will be overseen by the Children's Strategic Partnership, some of which are still sitting with oversight at the transformation programme that Ian and Fiona are cited on, but they are opportunities, I suppose, for us to make those links and set outcomes for lifetime early intervention impacts, and just show, I guess, the joins in the work between the council and the partnership. Thanks.
Yeah, no, really important point, Judith, because what you didn't say, and I'm sure this is the general focus, but what you've described to me as a layperson is that if I was in receipt of those improved services, then I would be the beneficiary of that, and my life would be improved as a consequence, which is the most important aspect of, I'm sure, that work and the outcomes that you've delivered as a consequence of that change or changes. So I'm not seeing any more hands going up. So at this point, I'm going to hand back to Fiona, because this requires our roll call. Fiona.
Yes, thank you, Chair. The recommendation is to sign off the draft commissioning strategy and to note the included commissioning intentions and key market messages. I'll come to each of the voting members individually. Shameen Akhtar.
Agreed.
Lachlan Bruce. Lachlan. Are you still there? I think you're still here, but you're on mute. If you can indicate in the chat which way you'd like to vote, please. Elizabeth Gordon.
Agreed.
Thank you. Fiona Ireland.
Agreed.
Moon Jordan.
Agreed.
Carol McFarlane.
Agreed.
Peter Murray.
Agreed.
Val de Souza.
Agreed.
Thank you. And I'll just see if oh, there's no message from Lachlan. Are you able to unmute Lachlan? I'll leave his vote for now, but on the basis of the other members, that's the recommendations approved unanimously, Chair.
Thank you, Fiona. Can we move to item 7, please?
Item 7 is the Strategic Workforce Plan for 2022-25, and it's Nikki Donald to present the report.
Nikki, over to you.
Thank you. The East Lothian Health and Social Care Partnership Strategic Workforce Plan for 2022-2025 has been delayed for just short of a year. It was initially pushed back a wee bit because of the contingency measures for exiting the pandemic. So we had it into Scottish Government in June last year, and they only returned it to us with comments in November of last year. So that's why it is slightly delayed. We have taken on board the comments that Scottish Government have made, and we have made some amendments to the plan so that it now suits their requirements. All of the general managers have been involved in assisting me in the writing of the workforce plan, and we have engaged with both of our partners and third sector organisations as well in the writing of this plan. So we're just presenting it to you as the IJB just for sign off today to say that you're happy with it to be published to on our internet and other public places.
Thank you, Nikki. Can you just remind me, where has it been prior to this apart from Scottish Government?
So it's been to the Scottish Government, to the SPG and all of the GMs within the partnership.
Thank you, that's helpful.
Sorry, and Nick McAllister from NHS Workforce Planning has seen it as well.
Thank you. Okay, another important piece of work setting out the relationship between the workforce requirements and the demands placed on the Health and Social Care Partnership. Fiona Wilson, did you want to add anything to it before we invite questions, or are you happy just to take questions?
Happy to take questions.
Okay, any questions or comments on this report and associated development plan? I'm not sure who was first, so Lynn, it was a draw, I think, but I'll take you first.
Thank you. In terms of the report, I appreciate this has been a number of places, but it's the first opportunity that I've had to look at it. On the action plan on page 32, I was interested in some of the reasons why we have leavers. And obviously I noticed that there's quite a lot under other. We hear a lot of reports about healthcare staff in particular leaving the sector for better paid jobs elsewhere in the private sector, like not related to care. I just wondered if there was any evidence of that within East Lothian and where you might get that from.
Nikki, are you able to respond to that?
Unfortunately, those that are marked under other, that is the only information that we are given. Obviously, when somebody leaves the organisation, they don't necessarily have to give us a reason for leaving. So there's very limited reporting that we can do on that.
It's a very good question, though, Lynn. Maybe it's something, if you wouldn't mind, we can perhaps revisit, because I think some more detailed analysis of that would be actually quite helpful to capture where the, if I put it in inverted commas, the competition is, and what is it we could do differently in order to try to maintain that workforce and make the other options less appealing, other than pay. Do you want to add anything, Lynn, to that? Because clearly you weren't able to get a response that you were seeking, but do you want to follow up at all?
I didn't expect there was, but I suppose it would be useful going forward if we've got some way of, I mean, I know that not everyone will give you the answer, but if we can ask at least, and then it might encourage people to be able to flag up to us, and as Peter says, give us that indication of what we are actually competing against, so that we've maybe got other ways of trying to keep people in the sector.
Thank you, Lynn. Val?
Thanks, Peter. Again, thank you for this very. Okay, again, thank you for this very full and clear report. And this is really a question for Judith, if I may. And it's really about, I guess, we're not very good in the social work profession in terms of our capacity planning, and sometimes looking and articulating the demands that social workers are under. And I distinguish the social work from the social care side of things, Judith, here, in a sense. And I just wondered, in your role as Chief Social Work Officer, if you were content that enough detail is in this report and that it's congruent with the clinical and care governance framework. So basically, if you're content with it, I guess your answer is going to be yes, but I'm giving you an opportunity to maybe comment on the social work and social care side of things and some of the pressures in there. Thank you.
I'm happy to come in, and it kind of fits with what I was going to come in terms of a comment with. So yeah, we've had some. I've had an opportunity to input to this report. I have regular discussions with social work managers about capacity and workforce. And I was going to come in to say that just this morning at Chief Social Work Officers Committee, we met with Iona Colvin as the Chief Social Work Advisor to get an update on the kind of workforce planning projects that COSLA and Social Work Scotland are and the Office of the Chief Social Work Advisor are working with together, which I guess need to be seen potentially partly in tandem with the proposal for a national social work agency, but also, which is the future part of it, but also there are there is current work underway now to make sure we're much better placed to understand our need, to demonstrate demand and what that means for social work. And I think it's not easy, because the better we do at early intervention, sometimes then the less we might seem to require in terms of the kind of statutory services, and the risk is it dilutes what is justifiably the professional social work role. And I think you're right, Val, in terms of understanding what roles and functions need to be delivered by qualified social workers as opposed to those other kind of paraprofessionals that sit around that. And for us to be really very clear, when we say social worker, that's what we mean. We don't mean social care worker, and we don't mean social care. So it's a regular debate and discussion, I would say, from me with the social work managers. And I think there will be, I'm hoping, more activity and more interest from government at the right things in terms of workforce planning. And I think the Setting the Bar report, which we've reported on through the Chief Social Work Officer report and separately, again, are good opportunities to do what other professions do better, and that is say, we need this amount of this in order to deliver these kind of statutory duties and functions. So I agree with your point. We're not very good at it. I think there is a groundswell of comment now that says it's time to get better at it, because actually we are entering a recruitment crisis in East Lothian. We're seeing that more profoundly in children's services, but I was seeing in Argyll and Bute this morning that it's the other way around, and adult services are really being decimated in terms of social work. So I think we need to keep a weather eye on it, and as we monitor the implementation plan of this plan, just be cited on the kind of national work that's progressing alongside that. Hope that answers your question, Val.
Well, are you okay with that? Yeah, no, that was really helpful. Judy, thank you for describing the way you did. Certainly helped me understand it a bit better. I'm not sure who was first. According to my list, I think it was Fiona Wilson, and then Laura, and then Elizabeth. That's the list I've got. So Fiona, if you would mind going.
Of course, I was wondering where you were going to go. I think it was Fiona, but I'll go to Laura. But Laura, actually, it might be a bit of teamwork here, because she may be coming on the same point. It was back to Lynn's comment around the levers, and I suppose something that we are trying to focus on is that exit interview. And Nikki will keep me right on this, but there has been the recording issue on the different systems. But again, just picking up on why people are leaving, making sure we are going through that process of offering an exit interview, trying to understand and learn, because that's just as important for us as we move forward. So there's other things that we are picking up that actually, Lynn, I would hope our data would get a bit better to try and understand, and then allows us to plan. And I think Laura might have come on something similar. It might be something different.
Okay, Laura, was it a different point?
No, that was it. But equally, I think it's the two-pronged. It's the promoting of East Lothian as an employer and a place to be. And I know we spoke about that before, Lynn, about that important. It's not just about a job in the NHS or a job in the council. For us, it's about you want to work and live in East Lothian and be part of East Lothian Health and Social Care Partnership. And there's a big, we've been working hard on our communications and our promotion and branding, as you know, to try and promote that. So we've got the two-prong approach: promotion to be here and to work for East Lothian Health and Social Care Partnership, and then equally to use that data and find out why are you leaving, and are you staying in East Lothian, are you leaving the sector entirely? And as Judith has kind of pointed out, that career pathway, and yeah, how do we get that within social care and social work, as well as within nursing as well? So yeah, certainly big pieces of work ahead, and we're just working hard to get, as not the employer, we rely on other partners' data and information, and that can be a struggle sometimes, but we are getting there.
Thank you, Laura. Elizabeth.
Thanks. Just following on from what Laura was saying, actually, about promoting East Lothian. In the report, there's a section, well, obviously it's mentioned the fact there's a significant issue with Band 5 nursing, which obviously is not just an East Lothian problem. But I noticed the issue that it's hard to advertise the jobs because they're tied up in multi-post adverts. It sometimes makes the East Lothian jobs that might actually be quite attractive hard for the right people to see. And I just wondered, are we totally reliant on the way that NHS Lothian advertise, and is there any way that we can help promote them more locally? Thanks.
Nikki, are you picking up?
Yeah. So the all of the NHS posts are advertised on the NHS website. We can highlight them on social media, etc. But because it's their landing page that all of the jobs are on, we are reliant on their processes. Lorraine, you probably want to come in a wee bit more on that.
Yeah, there's a couple of things around that. The chief nurses have been working with Catherine Crombie, who is the general manager for recruitment. There has been a long-term process where community nursing posts are all advertised collectively, but we are looking at that. But we have embarked upon, and Fiona will confirm this, because Fiona, myself and many others have compiled videos that Jennifer Jarvis has given us a massive amount of support with, and I have to say her team has been excellent in providing us with the expertise in this. Then the nursing videos highlighting all the opportunities in nursing, particularly Band 5s across East Lothian, are contained within the videos, and these are all uploaded to social media and are being taken to recruitment fairs and other particular areas to provide some good communication to people. And I have to say, since we've had those videos and uploaded them and used them at various different recruitment fairs, we actually have just recruited 6 Band 5 nurses across the last few weeks. There is work going on that Catherine's team's leading to look at having recruitment days and recruitment fairs actually within localities across the partnerships, which Catherine's team would come and do all the paperwork, get all the information, and actually do that processing on the day. And I know there's a one that's been scheduled for St John's Hospital in West Lothian in the coming weeks in Rias, but there is going to be a programme for that rolling out across many of the other areas. But I have to say that the recruitment videos have been really well received, and we're going to absolutely keep working at that. And our vacancy factor across nursing has certainly reduced over the last 3 months. Mental health remain a hot spot, and I know work's been taken forward there, and they're in the process of actually finalising their recruitment video.
Right, thanks, Lorraine. Fiona, before you come in, can I just ask Jennifer to let everybody know what she's been saying in the chat, just by way of clarity, that everybody gets the same information, Jennifer, about your web page.
Yeah, certainly. So the web link that I've just put in the chat there has been something that's been created off the back of these videos. So and this that web page there is linked to the main Health and Social Care Partnership web pages, and has direct links into both East Lothian Council and NHS Lothian, so that people who are looking for jobs can go direct via them to go into it. In addition to what we've got, there are 4 videos that are currently profiled on that webpage. The top one features our lovely Fiona doing a wee bit of an introduction, and then that goes onto a playlist of all of the other videos that we have. And down the bottom of the page, we have 3 feature videos. At the moment, we're currently showcasing kind of nursing opportunities across the board. We've got some on district nursing, and we've also got one on care homes, but those can be rotated at different points in time so that we can showcase different vacancies. I know that we've got one, some on for the quick service at the moment, so I'm likely to change that in the next couple of days so we can put something else in there as well. But yeah, I've just seen Maureen asking if we can link to that page. Absolutely, definitely, please do. And so this is a page that's just been created in the last kind of couple of weeks after the back of the videos being created and being uploaded and available on YouTube.
That's great, Jennifer, thank you. And Fiona, I hope you're smiling as much in the videos as you are in the forward photograph that we're looking at in this document. So I'm sure you'll attract many people in with a broad smile as is captured in that photograph.
I'm not so sure. It was probably a painful experience for both Lorraine and I of Jen saying smile. And if you watch the videos, there's a big hint around car parking. I mean, it looks amazing. You'd want to come and work in East Lothian. But the other thing I just wanted to add to it, because we've done these videos and there's been there was a big push around nursing, but actually we're taking a decision to widen that around the professional groups, so HP, social work. I do not want to lose this multi-professional approach and the value and the way we work in East Lothian. So really striking out. I know Leslie has done some amazing work and is always thinking ahead around kind of AHP, and Matt similarly. We want to do the same and look at that broad range, that if you're newly qualified, want a different experience, East Lothian is the place to come because we've got a lot to offer. So we're growing that slightly further, and I think that will be a strength to us in East Lothian, because when you look at these, and if you have a chance, it's amazing, and you feel pride looking at these videos. So I hope you feel the same as the IJB. And car parking is a big sell in this, so which makes me smile every time I hear it. So thank you, Peter.
Well, no, that's a really good further promotion of it, and I'll certainly have a look. And the last time I looked at something similar that Jennifer done, I think I posted it on my LinkedIn page to further kind of advertise it. So I'm happy to try to encourage others to do the same and get the reach out even further. John.
Thanks, Peter. I guess I'm talking from the perspective of being amid the GP workforce crisis at the moment, but also as interim clinical director, having been involved with a few teams that have really struggled over the past few months and trying to support them. And I would, one of the phrases I've recently heard, which has been particularly striking, is that you can't recruit your way out of a retention crisis. And I think going back to the comments about exit interviews, I personally feel that they are incredibly important. Not only do we need to be doing exit interviews on a regular basis, but we need to be honest and vulnerable and able to accept criticism in those circumstances, and also crucially to pull together the themes from exit interviews and collate them so that we can identify common themes that may reflect wider issues and systemic changes that we need to make to help retain people, because we're often losing the wisest and most talented members of our teams, and those are the ones that we really need to keep. Thank you.
Thanks so much for that, John. What important points that you make. Siobhan, you got to come in?
Yeah, no, just to say thank you. I think it's a really really important piece of work, Nikki, and I really value the kind of some of the examples that I put in there. I just wanted to ask around widening access and how much we can push around people that have a range of life experiences in different areas that may wish to go into health, social work or social care, and the modern apprenticeship schemes, whether that's something that we can focus on. I know that NHS Lothian are looking in a whole range of different areas, but how we can do that, because we are now going to be having a seventh secondary school in East Lothian, and how we take full advantage and advantage of that. And maybe in the kind of further on down the line, the Lothian Care Academy, what impact is that making, and what difference is that making to us in East Lothian, and what good practice can we be learning from that and taking that forward? Because if you look at the demographics of the workforce, that's really important to be focusing in that area.
Yeah, we have attended several careers events at the I think 3 or 4 of the high schools across East Lothian in the last few months, and it's been a really good opportunity for us to teach the kids that, you know, there's other ways into professions rather than just through the usual university route. That they can come in straight from school if needs be, or, you know, without qualifications, and, you know, there is opportunities for us to put them through their SVQs, through modern apprenticeships, even graduate apprenticeships. So we have been going out to the schools and introducing that to a lot of the children that have, you know, didn't even know these things existed. Yeah, my own son's in high school and he didn't know about modern apprenticeships, and his guidance teacher assumed that you know, that all the kids know about these things. So it's something that I think we need to work with the schools to try and get that information out there. And I have got a link in Knox Academy to start helping get that message across.
That's great, thanks, Nikki.
Can I ask a final question, I think, Nikki, just in relation to the action plan? How do you intend, if at all, I suppose, which forum do you intend to report progress? Because unless I'm missing something, I'm not seeing that it goes to SPG or goes to another area by way of updates. And I suppose the obvious question is, are there parts of it that aggregate up into some kind of performance report that we would see as the IJB?
Yes, so on a 6-weekly basis, I have a steering group with the GMs and some of the service managers, and we'll monitor the action plan throughout the year with at those. But we will also report to the IJB on a 6-monthly basis on how we are progressing with that action plan.
Right. So has that been added into the agenda already in Fiona Curry's tabling of agenda items looking forward?
No, not yet. Laura, I'll let you come in there.
So yeah, this is what the work that Claire Goodwin is doing around our kind of performance framework, how we're going to report more regularly into the IJB with regards to performance. So we will see, you will gradually start to see a pattern of performance information coming to the IJB, which has been lacking over the last few years. So we'll pick that back up, and yet the workforce will be one that comes at a 6-monthly juncture, and then for another one for the in the end of the year. But equally, you will see that reporting in the annual performance report along with other reports. But we thought it was important that we kept it distinct as well, so you could clearly see the workforce plan as well, which is important. So yeah, it will come.
Thank you, Laura. Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands go up, so this again requires a roll call. So Fiona, if you don't mind.
Thank you, Chair. The recommendation is to endorse the workforce plan and to allow it to be published. Shimeen Akhtar.
Agree.
Lachlan Bruce.
Agree.
Thank you. Lachlan, can I just confirm your vote on item 6?
That was agree as well.
Thank you very much. Elizabeth Gordon.
Agreed.
Thank you. Fiona Ireland.
Agreed.
Lynn Jardine.
Agreed.
Carol McFarlane.
Agreed.
Peter Murray.
Agreed.
And Val de Souza.
Agreed.
Thank you. That's the recommendation approved unanimously.
Thank you, Fiona. Can we go on to the last 2 items, which should be relatively brief? Item 8 first, please.
Item 8 is the IJB membership report, NHS Lothian reappointments. Did you want to cover that, or do you want me to cover that, Chair?
I'm happy to do it, Fiona, thank you.
Thank you.
As you can see, It's just to identify a continuation in the case of Fiona Ireland as a voting member of the IJB, and to note the reappointment of Lorraine Cowan as a non-voting member of the IJB in the specific role of registered nurse. And I invite any questions or comments on those two potential reappointments. No. So can I just, before you go to the, well, there's no roll call required, it's just a noting. So just before we go on to the next agenda item, can I thank both of them for their previous service to the IJB and look forward to ongoing commitment, because I know that both, particularly you, Fiona, from my perspective, because I work very closely with you, and Lorraine, I'm sure, in terms of your work you do in the background very quietly but diligently. Thank you both for all you've done. I look forward to an ongoing commitment to the IJB going forward.
Thank you. Move on to item 9. If members are happy to note the recommendations in the membership report. Yeah. Okay. Item 9 is the IJB and Audit and Risk Committee meeting dates for 2023-24. Before, if Peter's got anything to say in this, I just want to point out one small change, which is in Appendix 1. In order to avoid too much of a clash with the Mid-Lothian IJB meeting, it's proposed that the meeting on the Thursday, the 21st of September, begins at 1 o'clock rather than 2 o'clock, and that allows Claire as CFO to attend both of those meetings. But otherwise, the report and the meeting dates are as per set out.
Thank you, Fiona. You're a glutton for punishment, Claire. Thank you for accommodating that in the way that you have. So this requires a roll call. I'm not going to invite, well, I will invite questions if anybody wants or comments, but clearly it's relatively straightforward. So does anybody have any comments they wish to make other than what Fiona's just brought our attention to? No. So can I hand back to you, Fiona, please?
Okay, thank you. The recommendations are to approve the IJB meeting dates, the development session dates, and the Audit and Risk Committee dates. Shameen Akhtar.
Agree.
Lachlan Bruce. Lachlan.
Agree.
Thank you. Elizabeth Gordon.
Agree.
Fiona Ireland.
Agree.
Lynn Jordan.
Agree.
Carol McFarlane.
Agree.
Peter Murray.
Agree.
And Val de Souza.
Agree.
Thank you. That's those dates all approved unanimously, Chair, and that's our business for today.
Thank you very much, Fiona. Thank you for your assistance as always, and thank you to everybody for their contributions today. Clearly some difficult decisions lie ahead, and we need to provide as much support as we can to Fiona and Claire as we go forward in what will be no doubt a difficult next year. But I'm sure with the team that's around us that we can find very effective ways of building on what has become a really, in my view, a really efficient and effective IJB, but with clearly the underpinning health and social care partnership and the team that do all the dog work day in, day out to get us to where we are. So thank you all for your continued efforts, and some really good papers today, some really important papers around commissioning and around workforce. So thank you all for all that you've done to get us to where we are. And I look forward to seeing as many reposts of all the adverts that Jennifer's created in her videos, so we can embarrass Fiona as much as is humanly possible in every outlet that you've got available to you. So on that note, I will say goodbye and thank you.
Thanks, Peter.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Goodbye.
Thanks, bye.
Thank you.
Ian, could
Thanks,
you
Peter.
switch the
Goodbye,
recording
everybody.
off, please?
Thank you. Peter, if you're still there, I can show you how to do that Teams background.
Yeah, I'm here. Thanks, Fiona. Yep, that's my phone. I'll phone you in a minute, okay? Sorry, right.
Okay, okay. So I think that recording's still going on.
So it is.
Oh well, don't worry. If I can, I'll get the final recording at the end of it. Tell you what, I'll phone you back, and then hopefully that'll close down the recording.
Okay, so I'm just leave.